Content of the following program, including all statements from the hosts and guests, is to provide general information and commentary about the law. Under no circumstances does any statement made by the host or guest to a caller or listener constitute legal advice or the formation of an attorney-client relationship, and the material from this program shall not be viewed as substitute for a personal consultation with an attorney. Now, prepare yourself to be informed and entertained by Gus Bravo and Neil Kotze, two AV-rated trial lawyers who have been practicing law for a combined total of nearly 40 years. For the next 30 minutes, they will share their insight and commentary on important legal issues affecting all of us.
A lawyer starts his day at 9 a.m. by defending a deposition in Fort Lauderdale. The deposition begins in Mandarin Chinese with a translator, and he is there from 9 a.m. until 5:15 p.m. in downtown Fort Lauderdale, when he then has to hop in his car and race to Boca Raton because he co-hosts a radio talk show. You might guess who I'm talking about. Well, that lawyer, while racing to Boca Raton, gets on the phone with his wife and says, "Honey, you know, I start each show with a lawyer joke, and I haven't thought of one for tonight. Do you know a good lawyer joke?" And my wife says on the phone, "Yes, I married one." Welcome to Attorney Confidential with Gus and Neil. My name's Neil Kotze.
And I'm Gus Bravo. That's good. Congrats, Claire. That is the best joke.
The best joke, self-deprecating humor. I had to open. I said to her, "You know what, hon? I'm going to open with that."
Yeah, that is absolutely the best joke we've had so far in our show, by far. By far. So, and by the way, Boca Raton or Boca Raton, the way you pronounce it?
I Boca Raton, isn't it? Boca Raton?
Yeah, it sounded Raton. But anyways,
okay. Anyway, look. So if I'm a little off today, that was my day. I've been in a deposition since 9 a.m., the first half of which was in Mandarin Chinese.
How's your Mandarin?
I like the food, but the language I don't understand at all. But thank God we had a translator. But then it was all about chemistry and biophysics, and oh, what a day. But anyway, we're here to have a good time and talk about other things.
Yeah, don't start talking about chemistry and biophysics. That's one step closer to third-party beneficiary
from
last week. By the way, speaking of last week, I gave you a hard time last week about the Wikipedia.
I love Wikipedia.
No, and I wanted to show that my first actual thing that I printed out is a Wikipedia of the Triple Crown of Thoroughbred Racing. I was actually in a Popka this weekend, a soccer tournament for my daughter's team. And
is it a Popka or a Popka?
No, that one's a Popka.
Right.
And I didn't have a chance to watch the actual race, but obviously, as you should know, American Pharoah won the second leg of the Triple Crown. Something that my sources tell me has not been done since 1978. So we could be at the verge of history.
No, winning all three hasn't
winning
been.
all three.
Right.
I'm sorry. Yes.
The horses have won the first two.
There have been plenty. Actually, I think the trainer himself has had three or in the last 5 or 6 years that had a chance. But this one looks like could be the real deal.
Very interesting.
So I think one of the first slides we have up there is, to me, my favorite movie, horse movie. Excellent. That picture up there, Neil, you recognize it. You're a horse racing fan. It's from the Belmont, 1977 Belmont. No, I'm sorry, 1973 Belmont. And that's a picture of Secretariat. And you see how far ahead Secretariat was from the rest of the field, that the jockey has the opportunity to actually be looking back. So Secretariat obviously won the Triple Crown. American Pharoah is going for that now, and it is a very, very difficult.
I guess as someone with Egyptian descent, I should be rooting for American Pharoah. So it's
because the owner is from Egypt,
right?
But it's very, very smart of him to call it American Pharaoh, because I think if it was Egyptian Pharaoh, it wouldn't quite have the same.
Maybe not the same level of popularity.
Yeah,
especially not right now.
The other interesting news of the weekend, at least for me, I'm a sports junkie, was, and we started off a little bit last week talking about it's Tom Brady. And the whole Deflategate.
Right.
And now how this thing has just morphed into a completely...
I'm waiting for the law. I mean, if people are suing Pacquiao, why aren't people that bet against Brady suing Brady for affecting the point spread, arguably, with Deflategate? We haven't seen any... I haven't heard of any of those lawsuits. I actually did a search. I logged into Google, which you keep giving me. But I did a search. I couldn't find any lawsuits, and I looked at the database. I would have thought at least some lawyer would have come up. Now, it's not a winner, I don't think, but just because it's not a winner doesn't mean a
Well,
plaintiff's
you want to
lawyer
give out
won't.
your number. I'm sure you can get some people to call you.
I'm not filing that lawsuit.
Now, there's another
But-
picture that we had. I wanted up there of Tom Brady coming up shortly, hopefully, a picture up there. It's of when he was, obviously, he's dissected the Dolphins for many, many years, tortured the Dolphins. And so I found a picture on the interweb, like you like to say, of Tom Brady. Again, this is a licensed, duly licensed, properly licensed. You can use it for any commercial reasons or use. There's a picture of Tom Brady. There it is. And you can see he's about to throw a football, and there's Jason Taylor, just a half step too slow. And so I'll be glad to hear if Tom Brady actually gets suspended for the first 4 games. I'm not sure what the schedule is, but hopefully he won't be there when they face the Dolphins, because he's tortured us for years. But the interesting thing about the whole Deflategate is Brady's now hired a lawyer, of course,
Right.
to appeal the whole process.
Right.
And so, the NFL presents an interesting sort of set of facts, because you have, this is an entity that is exempt from the antitrust. I believe, I haven't really looked
Well, you
at
have a
area law.
collective bargaining agreement. It's almost like a
Correct.
union.
Correct.
So, I mean,
Correct.
the whole union law we've talked about employment issues. You have unions bring a whole new, different game involved.
So what's interesting about the Deflategate is it was Troy Vincent, a former Dolphin, who's the head of the sanctions committee, whatever, of the NFL. He's the one that handed down the 4-game suspension. Everyone knows it really came from Roger Goodell, who essentially runs it like a dictatorship. So what's funny about it is the next step would be for Brady and the Patriots, they already appealed it, to appeal it to, guess who? Roger Goodell. He's going to be the arbitrator.
Do they not recuse themselves when we go to court? If we have a judge that has an arguable bias, I think this is a little more than arguable. They recuse themselves.
Nope. Not in Roger Goodell's world.
Wow.
So the next step would be to then, when Goodell, obviously, as everyone expects, will uphold his own sanction.
You think?
Yeah. Well, the next step will be to actually appeal it in federal court. The problem is now you're challenging an arbitration ruling, which, as you know, is very difficult. I mean, you have to show
Abuse of discretion.
correct.
Probably.
Well, maybe you could in this
Right.
case, but Brady's hired a high-profile lawyer who's had a very good history of challenging the NFL. He's the one that represented the players' union in 2011 and so forth.
Interesting.
So it'll be interesting to keep tabs on that. Okay. All right. Moving on. So one of the things that I think we had, before we get to some of our questions, had a couple of interesting legal stories, or just stories that I pulled from the good old interweb. And I'm going to keep borrowing that phrase from you. So this one's headlined, this is actually Reuters. It's titled, "Trendy Houston area home on sale for $1," in a few words. Apparently, a couple in Houston is going to sell their $400,000 home. All they're asking for is a basically $150 offer fee. You submit an essay, and then you'll pay, I guess, $150 for the application, and then the winning bid only has to pay $1 for the home, which is ingenious because they're going to get a whole bunch of applications thinking they're going to buy, the home for $1. So if you get enough $150 application fee, then maybe you'll make up for the difference. But it's the couple said it's not a contest. These are heartstring letters, which are common in real estate transactions when you have multiple offers on a house. So Houston, $400,000.
Houston, we have a problem. I mean, what in the world?
But that's very clever.
Oh God!
But no, what's interesting here is how do you? So I guess you'll enter into some kind of contract with the folks, and
They're
is that
opening
adequate
themselves-
consideration?
They're opening themselves up for a can of worms there. The $150. What if they don't find one they like?
Oh, I think they're committed. But you're right. It's a contest, right? It's kind of one of those first 10 people that come through the doors. We offer you the television at $1.
What if it's what if it's their cousin Vinny that wins?
Well,
And
they're not. Supposedly, they're asking close friends and family not to apply.
They're asking, but they don't. Are they guaranteeing?
No. And the
So-
funny thing is apparently they don't want any descriptive, characteristics, any information that will identify who the person applying.
It's called a sweetheart deal. All it takes is it could be. It doesn't even have to be a close friend or relative. It could be a very distant friend who has a contract that they're going to just give them the house back after they get it for the $1 or whatever. I mean, wow.
Right. Yeah. So, but I'm going to submit an essay. I'm sure you will as well. Go for it.
I don't want a house in Houston. I don't.
Well, $400,000 for $1. Next one is headline. This is Massachusetts, Boston. Please don't drunkenly chase the bears. Boston police urge. Apparently they're having a problem. The North Adams Police Department is urging everyone not to chase bears through the woods with a dull hatchet drunk. Yes, that really did happen apparently one night, said the police sergeant, in a city of 13,500 people. So next time you're in Boston, Neil, you want to have a few beers at the local bar, make sure you avoid going after bears. But I guess the question is, you can go after bears, just don't do so with a dull hatchet.
Or after having drunk. That doesn't make any sense. So you can do it sober? I guess no one would do it sober. Maybe that's the issue.
Probably. I would imagine. All right, this
Where
next
do you
one,
find these?
This is from Reuters. This is all. It's if you do a search on Google, you actually do log into Google though. I have to apologize to you. Gmail or Google now requires you to do a search. You have a Gmail account. You have to log in. So in theory, you're partially right.
I was ahead of my time.
Yeah, that's one way to look at it.
Right. By the way, just like I don't share my jokes with Gus for the beginning of each show, he never shares with me the things he finds on Reuters and brings
not.
to.
Why
so
would I?
Exactly.
I want the natural reaction.
I'm just as surprised
Picture
as everybody
yourself
else.
running after bears in a drunken stupor, or writing the essay for the Houston Home. The last one. Oklahoma woman charged with removing body parts from rival's corpse. This one's an interesting one. An Oklahoma woman accused of slashing the face and cutting body parts off the corpse of a romantic rival was due to appear in Tulsa court on Monday for a hearing on increasing her bail. Apparently, this person is charged with the unlawful removal of body part from a deceased for cutting off the toe and the breast from the body of the other woman as it was awaiting cremation at the funeral home. And she's been charged with a crime, not only for doing that, but interrupting a funeral service, stealing the shoes meant for the woman, and an unauthorized dissection slashing the face of her former boyfriend's lover as it laid in the casket.
Now,
Only in Oklahoma.
Only now, if you cut certain things off of a male corpse, only then would it actually be a penal offense. I waited till you drink water before.
I almost spit it out. How lame that was. We'll have you ask your wife to give us more. We're going to have to switch. I think we have to do a substitution. But what's interesting about that is, obviously, you think about the kind of damages. You can only be charged in criminal, not because the person's dead, right? I mean, I don't know if the family members could bring a claim for emotional distress.
Not in Florida. Because in Florida, you would have to have, in order to get...
the impact rule?
Yeah, you have the impact rule.
Cutting off the toes?
But of a corpse.
Right, but then you have the extreme outrageous conduct.
I think they'd have to observe it. The mere fact that they found out, that would be an interesting
Look,
test in Florida.
If any halfway decent lawyers are listening, please call us and give us the answer to that.
I don't think you'd have it in Florida.
Know.
I think in North Carolina you might, because you don't have the impact rule. But in Florida, I think... it's a corpse. There's no impact with the corpse. Not that we have to go into a law school diatribe on the impact rule in Florida, but in order to have a negligent infliction of emotional distress, you've got to have some level of impact with the plaintiff. Intentional is a little bit different, but it still would have to be with.
Well, there's exceptions. Listen, we're gonna lose the 5 people that are listening. Now are going to completely drop off. Here's the last one, and then
I thought the other one was the last one.
Well, we have one more before
it's
we
like
go to the break.
Never believe a lawyer when he says, "Your Honor, I only have one more question," because he usually has 2, 3, or 4. But go ahead. Gus.
One more question broken into 9 parts.
Exactly, with subparts.
Yes. Beijing police warn strange outfits on subway may cause stampede. So they're patrolling the city subways and trains to stop people wearing face masks, strange costumes, and forming flash mobs, warning commuters that such actions could jeopardize public safety by causing stampedes. Next time you're in a Beijing subway or a New York subway, just be on the lookout for people wearing masks. And you know what a flash mob is?
Yes.
You do?
Yes.
I'm actually very impressed. I'm sorry.
It's somebody that mugs you and steals one of those flash drives.
Yeah, I get it. All right. So look, we're coming up on the half hour.
Saved by the bell.
Yes.
Thank God.
Yes.
Please go to commercial.
Well, listen, the second half of the show, we'll talk about something more substantive, I guess. Neil, you got to come up with a topic for the second half hour of the show, or second half of the show. I keep messing that up.
I'll work on my Mandarin Chinese.
And for anyone that wants to call in and rescue us, 888-565-1470. You're listening to Attorney Confidential with Gus and Neil.
Attorney Confidential with Gus and Neil is being brought to you by the law offices of Neil D. Codsey and Bravo Law. Bravo Law is a business litigation firm known for providing common sense solutions to small businesses and individuals throughout South Florida. Mr. Bravo is rated AV by Martindale-Hubbell and Superb by AVVO, the highest ratings available from these two entities. The law offices of Neil D. Codsey is a litigation boutique with offices in Broward and Miami-Dade counties. Mr. Codsey is a veteran trial lawyer with nearly 25 years of jury trial experience. He is also a two-time recipient of the South Florida Daily Business Review's Most Effective Lawyer Award, a recipient of numerous awards for providing pro bono legal services, and has been recognized by the National Law Council. Call our office, 786-464-0841 or 954-790-6711 and get informed. You're listening to Attorney Confidential with Gus and Neil. If you have a comment, question, or just want to contribute to the conversation, call the show at 888-565-1470 and share your thoughts on what's going on. Now, back to Gus and Neil for more Attorney Confidential.
Welcome back to Attorney Confidential with Gus and Neil. The first half of the show, we've been talking about absolutely nothing, Neil. And
it was like a Seinfeld episode. I wasn't sure where it came out of left field. Well, that's okay.
This is what happens when you leave me to do all the work.
Oh, yeah.
So, all right. So now we're going to get into a little bit more meat on the bones. All right. So we pulled, I think, a couple questions from a website called AVO or AVO.com.
AVVO.
So AVO is a directory, lawyer directory, where prospective clients can also post questions, all different types of questions. So we pulled a couple that we thought were somewhat interesting. So I'm going to play the role of client, and Neil, you're going to try as you might to play the role of lawyer. So here's the question.
My best.
Question. My daughter stuck the back of her earring inside her ear canal. We took her to the ER where they tried for about 2 hours to get it out. It took 3 people to hold my daughter down while they attempted taking it out. Finally, they said we had to take her to a specialist because they didn't want her moving around to cause damage to her eardrum. They had mentioned her eardrum was fine and that the earring was nowhere near it. When we took her to the specialist, we decided it would be best to put her under since she wouldn't come near the doctor or let the doctor come near her. Sorry, I'm paraphrasing here.
Right.
The day of the procedure, the doctor informed us that there was a hole in her eardrum and that he had patched up. Can I sue the emergency room?
Can I sue? Well, we all know the answer to can I sue is yes. Should you sue, or is it worth suing? You know, one of the things we've talked about in prior shows is there's a difference between liability and damages. Liability is, will you actually win the lawsuit? Is the ER liable? That's one question. Then the next question is, if you win, what are the damages? Now, we don't have enough information in that fact pattern to predict what the damages are, but a small hole puncture in an eardrum could be very minimal, could cure itself, could not have any permanency to it. And the problem with med-mal, and both Gus and I have litigated med-mal, and we have a lot of friends that have litigated med-mal cases, is they are so expensive to try. I mean, that case, just that little description tells me that you would spend up to $50,000 before you got to trial. And so the question is, are those damages even worth $50,000? Then you pay the lawyer 40%. So that's a classic case that unless that case is worth more than $200,000, it's not worth it. Because if it's worth $100,000, you'd pay the lawyer $40,000, your expert $50,000, some additional costs, the $5,000 to $10,000, and the lawyer would get $40,000. The client would get nothing. So in that case, based on those facts, I'm not even sure I would tell that person to bother talking to a lawyer unless the damages are significant, unless there's a permanent hearing loss or a permanent effect on the eardrum.
So your answer is
a very roundabout. I would ask I would need to know whether there's a permanency of damage and how serious it is for that child.
So you're saying there's a chance.
Small, as small as the whole.
Listen, med-mal are medical malpractice cases are, like as you mentioned, very difficult to undertake because of the costs. And rightfully so. Obviously, the standards are really high, and you also have to get an opinion from another doctor.
And I'm not sure under that fact pattern the ER doctors did anything wrong.
Right.
I mean, they had a problem child that was. Don't blame the child, and I can't imagine how my daughter would react.
Not every wrong needs to be or should be remedied by the courts. Right?
Exactly.
And so sometimes these things happen. It's unfortunate. But the cost-benefit analysis and the stress just may not justify.
And that's another thing too. The stress of putting yourself and your child through litigation, it's sometimes just not worth it to recover.
All right, let me jump to the next one because we're running out of time here. So we spent so much time talking about bears and Chinese people, Chinese subway goers. Anyone who's listening, I apologize. I applied. Question. I applied for a job, but was denied the job due to my driving record. The record used to disqualify me was not a driving record, but a record from the courthouse that had documented my moving violations. This document was not from the DMV, and we were not part of my official driving record from the DMV. The other applicants had criminal misdemeanors, which could be argued that the misdemeanors on the record were relevant to the position they were applying for. They all got hired despite having these misdemeanors on the record. Yet I was not hired, and I was held to a quasi-driving policy within the company, which cannot be explained when I ask about it. But it is essentially used to disqualify. It is essentially used to disqualify applicants based on the feelings of management. There's no question, but I would assuming is again.
Can I paraphrase what I just heard? So
yes.
What that person is saying is, I was guilty of some crimes that I wasn't expecting them to find out about. And those crimes are lesser than the ones that other people were hired with. Therefore, is it fair that they didn't hire me?
Something along those lines.
Well, yes. I don't know how else. Okay, if you committed, I don't care if they're whatever they are. If you have some traffic offenses and you're being hired to be a driver, wasn't that the job?
Yes.
So, okay.
Yes.
If a company's not going to hire you because they find out that you have traffic offenses, even though they may not be official court documents, they found out and they're legitimate traffic offenses.
Even if they hired guys that have been charged with drunk driving. They just go the extreme example.
But there's no right to be hired. The law with respect to employment says that we can hire people and fire people at will, as long as we don't discriminate against them based on some unlawful reason as recognized by statutes in Florida or statutes the United States. And those reasons would be age, gender, race, sex, national origin, disability, religion. You can't discriminate against someone on the basis of that. You can discriminate against somebody on the basis of their poor driving record when you're hiring someone to be a driver. So I don't think that might be one of those few times where I might say,
but it wasn't my fault. All right, let's move on.
Gosh.
So the answer is no. That one's a fat chance. Last one. I'm currently trying to work as a truck driver. The potential employer stated I have a bad driving. Bad? Okay.
Sure, this isn't the same one?
No, it's number 3 on the email you sent me yesterday.
Okay.
Notice I'm giving you all the credit for these bad questions.
Right.
But my potential employer, when I go down to the DMV and get an official lifetime record, it reflects no tickets. But my potential employer went to the clerk of court's website and pulled up the old tickets and used that to disqualify me. Can this potential employer? This is like the same question.
It's the same question.
Did you send me the thing? Okay, so the answer is no.
No, twice. Asked and answered. Objection, asked and answered.
You sent me, there was an interesting case that you sent me about the bully.
Oh, yeah.
Go ahead, talk about it.
Well, there was a bullying. I sent it to you last night while I was getting ready for my deposition, but if I remember correctly, it's somewhere in the South.
Somewhere in your notebook here.
In my notebook, no. This is the Broward suit. You didn't give me the other notebook. But the bullying case was in the Pinecrest area. The Palmer Trinity.
Yes.
Where apparently the facts are just egregious. And one of the things, which Gus, this is your area of specialty because you have a similar case.
We should not name names. Right. It's a private school.
Right. But the private schools don't have to comply with the same anti-bullying laws that the public schools do.
Correct.
Apparently. And so it's something that needs to be corrected in the law. There's so many times where the law seems to favor one person or the other. It's like the autism case I tried Medicaid was denying a benefit to autistic children that private insurance companies were required to pay for.
Correct.
So we're
this is the
differentiating.
Opposite. We have
Right.
When it comes to bullying, parents understand when it comes to bullying and similar types of potential hazards that your kids can, bullying and hazing and all sorts of threats and whatever, you have more protection afforded under Florida law in a public school than you do in a private school. So this is one of those buyer beware. You think you're paying more money to go to a private school and you're going to have greater protection and whatnot, but the reality is completely the opposite, and that's what this Palmer Trinity case is going to reveal. There are other arguments, and with some things we're arguing in our case that we can get around it, but at the end of the day, the laws are meant right now only to apply to public schools, particularly when it comes down to bullying. All right, so those are our questions. Now I wanted to move on to another next segment called I like to call Fun Facts, which is actually
good because we haven't had any fun facts yet.
I'm going to give my son credit because he likes to always tell me some fun facts. I have 3, and I'll go through them quickly because I think we're running out of time. Unless you have some fun facts you want to share.
I could make some up, but go ahead.
All right. So, number 1, 6 days after Easter in 1513, the Spanish conquistador Juan Ponce de Leon landed near what is now the city of St. Augustine. In honor of the holiday and the area's plant life, he named the land Florida for the Spanish phrase for the Easter season, Pascua Florida. The name is the oldest surviving European place name in the U.S. Well, actually, Pascua Florida. Pascua is Easter, but did you know that? That's where the name Florida came from?
But I got to hear you pronounce
Juan Ponce de Leon.
What I love about that is one of the favorite things. For anybody here, the 3 people listening, if any of you are in Atlanta, when I lived in Atlanta,
we've lost those people
I
a long
love
time
from
ago.
Atlanta to Decatur, Georgia, there's a road that's spelled that way. You know how the Georgians pronounce that road? They call it Ponce de Leon. When you're traveling to Decatur, I'm going to go, you take a left on Ponce de Leon, and
All right, next fun fact. Did you know, Neil, that Florida is the largest producer of citrus fruits in the U.S. and second largest in the world? Number 1 being, take a guess. No guess? Okay, Brazil.
Brazil, oh.
It's the largest in the U.S. How could California be?
Oh, I think it's the second largest in the U.S.
No.
and second largest in Oregon.
Lastly, Benjamin Green, a Miami pharmacist, invented the first suntan lotion. He used a greasy substance called red vet pet, which is red veterinarian petroleum, to protect himself and other soldiers from ultraviolet rays during the World War II. After the war, Mr. Green mixed red vet pet, cocoa butter, and coconut oil into a product that would eventually become Coppertone, suntan green. Did you know that?
I did not know that.
Excellent. Neil, I think we have literally 1 minute. So you get only 10 seconds
to tell you, what did we learn today? What we learned today is
takeaway.
if you get upset because you didn't get hired as a truck driver, don't take it out by going to China and getting drunk and attacking a bear on your way to Boston. Other than that, I couldn't tell you what we learned.
There was some meat there somewhere.
Bear meat, yes.
Listen, I said entertainment over informative. And lastly, we'll close with our thought of the day. Hopefully the picture will come up there you go. So this is one of my all-time favorites. This is Thomas Edison, who simply said, look, I haven't failed. I've just found 10,000 ways it will not work.
On that note, good night and good luck. This is Neil Kotze.
Don't give up. That's our motto for the next show.
All right.
Attorney Confidential with Gus and Neil. Tune again next week.
You have been listening to Attorney Confidential with Gus Bravo and Neil Kotze, 2 rated AV trial attorneys with over 40 years of experience. Tune in next week for another episode of entertainment, insight, and just plain fun. That's Monday, 6 p.m. on WNN, 1470 AM. See you next Monday for more Attorney Confidential. The opinions expressed on the preceding sponsored program were strictly those of its host.